be a little better for us in the third.
Jen, I got to say, in all my years covering you guys and watching this program, I can't think of a more hustle-riddled performance. I mean, it just seems like every single play, it wasn't one player. It was an entire team locked in, energy, hustle-wise. I mean, did you notice that early on in the game? Did you notice in the scouting report? And what can you say just about, it just seemed like they were totally in sync.
Yeah, we just talked about, I felt like, I really enjoyed how Michigan plays. That really have a lot of respect for Kim and her staff. They're fun. They score. They work really hard. They're always kind of kamikaze, right? And I feel like when we're rolling, I talk a lot. I just want to be a blue collar, blue blood. So we have plays that we reward about blue collar plays. And when we're really going and we're really locked in, boy.
Watch that body language carefully. Jan Jensen just coached one of the biggest wins of her career, a dominant upset over number 6 Michigan, and she's not celebrating some revolutionary scheme or tactical genius. She's talking about being a blue-collar blue blood, about diving for loose balls, about grit and hustle. And there's a reason she keeps coming back to that phrase, because right now Jensen is navigating something incredibly delicate, building her own legacy while coaching in the shadow of the biggest star women's college basketball has ever seen. Iowa just dismantled Michigan in a game that wasn't even close. The final score doesn't tell half the story. This was a statement performance on Senior Day, the kind of win that announces you're a legitimate contender. And Caitlin Clark, watching from her WNBA life with the Indiana Fever, took to social media to celebrate, not just the win, but specifically Jan Jensen's accomplishment. Because Jensen just became the first head coach in Iowa women's basketball history to win 20-plus games in each of her first 2 seasons. That's not riding coattails. That's building something real.
I believe 8 players make the all-defense team this year. Kylie Feuerbach's not going to have the stats that people look for, but why make your case for her to be
I just feel like that's the one thing I think happened with Kylie last year, and Coach Abby Stamp, she was really disappointed about that, because it's usually a few blocks or you rebound. And I think sometimes there's so much going on for the people who vote, and you can go fast on that. I don't really know. You just don't remember it. Oh yeah, she has rebounds. Oh, she has blocks. So they're good at defense. But we put Kylie on the very best player every game in and every game out, and she works tirelessly to disrupt. And there's a few games, they might still get their points or whatever, but she said.
There it is. Jensen makes her case for Kylie Feuerbach as an all-defense selection, and listen to how she frames it. She's not just lobbying for her player, she's acknowledging the reality of coaching in the Big Ten. There's so much elite talent, she says. She knows Ohio State has defensive studs, she knows Illinois has lockdown players, but she's making a specific argument. Feuerbach guards the opponent's best player every single night and makes their life miserable. This is January 2025, and Iowa came into this game ranked 13th in the country with a 20-5 record. Michigan was ranked 6th with the exact same record. Both teams at 20-5, both fighting for tournament positioning, and Iowa absolutely dominated. Hannah Stuelka grabbed 12 rebounds. Avra Hayden dropped 24 points despite feeling sick the day before. Kylie Feuerbach set the defensive tone from the opening tip. This wasn't a one-player show. This was the kind of balanced, team-oriented performance that defines Jensen's coaching philosophy.
Was some of that stuff with Ava kind of out of character? I imagine you liked some of that a lot. The talk, the getting separated. For lack of a better term, kind of a badass today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, number one, Ava wasn't feeling great yesterday at practice. Everybody's got something going around, and today she looked a little peaked when we had breakfast, and I thought she kind of started a little, kind of flat. And, so we went through the first quarter, and everybody's going to try to double her and, do something if you're with one of your leading scorers. So I just had a chat with her in the second, quarter time. I just said, hey, look, no one really knows you're not feeling your best. But, you either, if you're really, really sick, I get it, but we got to go some different directions, because you're going to get hammered, and if you don't have the energy. And, I'm with you, but we got to kind of go. And I said, it's hard, but if we'll get you some rest, but you got to attack. And then I think at halftime or something, she must have got some bananas or something. But I think, that was a big growth step for her. because of that, badass, kick-ass mentality. You kind of have to have that. And when she really answered in that fourth quarter, she just kind of was, that high-low game got going. And to me, when she kind of tripped it, that's when it started to change. So I thought a lot of growth for her today, and that adrenaline got her rolling. I was proud of her, because the first time you're sick and trying to manage it, it is kind of weird as an athlete.
Now this is fascinating. Jensen reveals that Ava Hayden wasn't feeling well before the game. Something going around the team, low energy at breakfast, looked flat in the first quarter. So Jensen pulled her aside during a timeout and basically said, "Look, nobody knows you're sick, but if you don't have the energy to fight through contact, I need to go in a different direction." That's coaching. That's not coddling a star player or making excuses. That's demanding excellence even when circumstances aren't perfect. And Hayden responded. She found another gear in that fourth quarter, got the high-low game working, and Jensen specifically mentions that badass mentality that elite players need. She even brings up Megan Gustafson, one of the greatest players in Iowa history, and tells this story about Gustafson saying, "We're going to stab and twist during a crucial huddle." Sweet person off the court, absolute killer in competition. Jensen is trying to cultivate that same mindset in Hayden. You can be classy, you can be confident, but you have to own your space. And for a coach in her second season, developing that competitive edge in a young star while maintaining team chemistry, that's high-level program building.
Caitlin Clark era. Can you say what that means, what they meant to not only Iowa basketball, but to women's basketball as a whole?
Yeah. Well, I just think, my thing with, anytime there's a transition like we had, and anytime it's just such a transient world in sports now, it's unfortunate, but you can go to the portal, you can play right away, and all the things, and there's just a lot of people always in these kids' ears. It was just really cool for this group. They loved it here so much, and they, wanted to continue being a part of it. And I think it's a great example for kids everywhere and families everywhere that, when you got something pretty special, be careful in trading it in. Just for, whether it's minutes or, proximity or what have you, or money. These guys, it wasn't quite as big a deal a couple of years ago. But I think the fact that they were role players in the early year, and then, I just said, hey, let's make your era special. What can we do? I think we got some possibilities here, and that really excited them. And, come what may the rest of the year, I think this group has put their own mark on it. Yes, the Final Fours are awesome, and that's what we're shooting for, right? But I think the way they're playing and, ushering in these young kids, we're younger than we're older. We're talking about Ava Hayden a lot, right? Chit Chat's running the offense, playing great defense too. On Swords today, she made it tough on her. And Hannah's hand, I was so happy she got a double-double. But I just think they knew the standard. They helped us continue to push the standard. Great young women. I love
the senior class. This is where Jensen gets emotional, and this is where the Caitlin Clark era casts its longest shadow. These seniors, the ones being celebrated on Senior Day, they were role players during Iowa's back-to-back national championship game runs. They could have transferred, they could have chased bigger roles elsewhere. The transfer portal was wide open, NIL money was flowing, and every program in the country would have taken experienced players from a Final Four team. But they stayed. And Jensen makes a point of praising that loyalty in an era where it's increasingly rare. When you got something pretty special, be careful trading it in just for minutes or proximity or money, she says. That's a direct shot at transfer portal culture, and she's earned the right to say it because these players bet on her and she's delivered. They went from supporting cast members in the Caitlin Clark show to featured players in Jensen's system. And now they're part of a team that just destroyed a top 10 opponent and is positioning itself for another deep tournament run. That's player development. That's culture building. That's exactly what athletic directors look for when they're evaluating whether a coach can sustain success after a superstar graduates.
You talked about Ava's badass, as you said. Has that been building over the years, do you think, as she gets more time?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of have to grow into it. Like, you have to become good. And then you start to take the punches of frustration. And then you either take it and, like, oh, I got fouled, kind of give it on back. And I think she's finding that fine line, right? Of, the competitive spirit of the great ones. You can do it with class and you can do it with confidence. It doesn't have to be arrogant or cheap, but you have to own your space. And I think Ava's doing a beautiful job of owning her space. You know, she's still really young in this game, right? But I think she's taken these steps in different ways. And, you know, speaking of, okay, we all love Megan Gustafson, greatest competitor, sweetest, right? There was one time in a game when we needed it at a huddle, and Megan was kind of a leader, kind of just by, and one. And we were like, had to manage the clock. And Lisa wrapped up, and all of a sudden Megan goes, "We are going to stab and twist." And everybody was like, what? Megan so violently just said we're stabbing and twisting, right? And I think there's something that clicks over sometimes, and I'm seeing a little bit of that in Ava, a little bit of that stab and twist.
You talk about reforming defensively.
Mm-hmm.
It was only 2.5 weeks ago that you guys gave up 91 to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
How much was confidence restoration being part of that, knowing how well you guys had played defensively before?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of the things at that time, and it wasn't an excuse. The injuries happen; they are the hazards of our jobs, and you just have to, you know, reform. It was just all a lot of timing. I mean, most everybody can play stellar defense against a UCLA on the road, and it may not be enough, right? So that was that. We come back, and those trips are tiring. And no excuse, but I think when they got to do it all the time, I think that's a challenge. And Minnesota is really good. And so you come off of that trip, you're reeling, you're still trying to reform, and you're underconfident, and you're playing against a team that's really confident and, you know, really, really can score. So I think part of it is Minnesota is really good. They were really good that night. We just were getting back and continue to reform, and I just think that it looked a little tired. In fact, after that, I have cut practices. I think I worked them too hard. I think worked it too hard in between the USC and UCLA game. We came back, and I worked it too hard to practice was too long, it was too.
Jensen just admitted she overworked her team. Let that sink in for a second. A head coach in her second year publicly acknowledging she made a mistake in practice management. She's talking about that Minnesota game where Iowa gave up 91 points, a defensive disaster that happened just 2.5 weeks ago. And she's not making excuses about injuries or tough scheduling. She's saying, I worked them too hard between the USC and UCLA games. Practices were too long, too many trips up and down the court. I wore them out. That kind of self-awareness is rare, especially from a coach trying to establish credibility. But it also reveals something important about the challenge Jensen is facing. Iowa just completed a brutal West Coast road trip, played UCLA and USC back-to-back, came home exhausted, and immediately had to face Minnesota, who came in confident and scored at will. The Hawkeyes looked gassed, they looked uncertain, and Jensen realized she had pushed too hard trying to maintain the defensive intensity that had defined their season. So she adjusted, cut back practice time, focused on preserving legs instead of drilling repetitions, and the results speak for themselves. Iowa has been defensively locked in ever since, culminating in this dominant performance against Michigan where they held a high-powered offense in check for 40 minutes.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy John the Liquidator coming back with another video. So it looked like Caitlin Clark is going viral for making a powerful statement about the Iowa women's basketball team beating Michigan this afternoon. Guys, for this one here, we got to go all the way up to Iowa. Let's get it. Let's go. And it looked like Iowa just put the nation on notice, man. They just beat Michigan, that was ranked number 6 in a battle. Beat the snot out of them, bro. I can't even lie. It was just a spectacular performance. And I'm telling you right now, Jan Jensen is creating her own.
This is where Caitlin Clark enters the story. Because while Jensen was coaching this massive upset, Clark was watching from wherever she was spending her WNBA offseason, and she immediately took to social media to celebrate. Not just a generic great win post. She specifically highlighted Jensen's historic achievement and praised the program's performance. That matters more than you might think. Clark could have stayed silent. She could have kept her distance and let Jensen build her own identity without any association with the previous era. But instead, she's actively supporting her former program and amplifying Jensen's accomplishments to her massive following. That's the kind of gesture that strengthens a program's culture and helps with recruiting. Because here's the reality. Every high school player considering Iowa knows about Caitlin Clark. They know about the sold-out arenas, the national championship games, the cultural phenomenon, and they're wondering, Can Iowa still be that without her? Can Jensen maintain that level of excellence, or was it all just one generational talent carrying an otherwise ordinary program? And Jensen is answering that question game by game. 20 wins in year 1, 20-plus wins in year 2, a top 15 ranking, dominant victories over ranked opponents, player development that's turning role players into stars, a defensive identity that doesn't rely on one player's brilliance, but she's also doing something harder. She's establishing her own coaching personality. That blue-collar, blue-blood phrase isn't just marketing, it's a philosophy. Jensen wants Iowa to be elite and gritty at the same time. She wants the program to have the reputation of a traditional power while maintaining the scrappy, hard-working mentality that defines Iowa culture. Watch how she talks about this Michigan game. She keeps coming back to hustle plays, diving for loose balls, Kylie Feuerbach's defensive intensity, the team's willingness to fight through a physical, low-scoring grind. Those aren't the hallmarks of a team relying on one superstar to create offense. That's a team playing with collective toughness, and that's the blueprint for sustained success. Because generational talents like Caitlin Clark come around once every decade or two. But if you can build a culture of defensive excellence and team-first basketball, you can compete for championships every single year. Jensen is doing this the right way. She's not trying to replicate what Lisa Bluder did with Clark. She's not trying to find the next once-in-a-generation scorer and build everything around her. She's building a system that can win with balance, depth, and defensive intensity. And it's working. The Big Ten is absolutely loaded this year. Ohio State has elite talent. USC and UCLA joined the conference and brought West Coast firepower. Michigan, despite this loss, is a legitimate top 10 team. And Iowa is right there in the mix, competing with all of them, proving they belong in every big game. That Minnesota loss 2 weeks ago, Jensen learned from it. She adjusted her practice approach, managed her players' energy better, and the team responded. That's coaching growth in real time. That's a young head coach figuring out how to navigate a long season with a target on her back every night. Because make no mistake, every opponent circles the Iowa game on their schedule. They want to beat the program that just went to back-to-back national championship games. They want to prove that Iowa is vulnerable without Caitlin Clark. And Jensen has to prepare her team for that intensity every single night, while also managing egos, developing young players, and dealing with the inevitable injuries and adversity that come with a long season. The Senior Day context makes this win even more significant. These seniors could have left after Clark graduated. They could have gone somewhere else for bigger roles or more money, but they stayed, and Jensen rewarded that loyalty by putting them in position to have their best seasons. Hannah Stuelka is having a career year. The role players are contributing in meaningful ways, and the young players like Ava Hayden are developing into stars. That's program building. That's not just winning games, it's creating a culture where players want to stay, develop, and be part of something bigger than themselves. And in the current college basketball landscape, where the transfer portal and NIL deals create constant roster turnover, that kind of stability is incredibly valuable. Caitlin Clark recognizing Jensen's achievement publicly reinforces that culture. It sends a message to current players and recruits. Iowa takes care of its people. The greatest player in program history still supports the team. The transition from Bluder to Jensen has been seamless. This is still a program where you can compete for championships, and Jensen has earned that endorsement. She's not riding Clark's coattails, she's building her own legacy. 20-plus wins in each of her first 2 seasons as a head coach is a remarkable accomplishment, regardless of who came before her. Most coaches take years to establish that kind of consistency. Jensen did it immediately, while navigating the impossible expectations that come with following a legend. So when you watch that interview footage and hear Jensen talk about blue-collar, blue-blood mentality, understand what she's really saying. She's defining her program's identity in a way that honors Iowa's recent success while establishing her own coaching philosophy. She's not trying to be Lisa Bluder. She's not trying to recreate the Caitlin Clark experience. She's building something sustainable, and the results prove it's working. Iowa just demolished a top 10 Michigan team on Senior Day, in front of a sold-out Carver Hawkeye Arena, with a balanced attack and suffocating defense. That's not luck. That's not residual talent from the previous era. That's excellent coaching and player development. The question now is, how far can this team go? They're ranked 13th with a 20-5 record. They're battle-tested from playing one of the toughest schedules in the country, and they're peaking at exactly the right time as the tournament approaches. Jensen has proven she can win big games. She's proven she can develop players. She's proven she can adjust her coaching approach when something isn't working. The next step is proving she can lead Iowa back to the Final Four, not as Caitlin Clark's former program, but as Jan Jensen's team. And based on what we just saw against Michigan, the defensive intensity, the balanced scoring, the toughness, the coaching adjustments, this team has all the pieces to make a deep run. Caitlin Clark will be watching. Iowa fans will be watching, and the rest of women's college basketball better be watching too, because Jan Jensen is building something special in Iowa City. She's not trying to recreate the past. She's writing her own chapter in Iowa basketball history, and if she can lead this team to another Final Four in just her second season as head coach, the conversation about her legacy won't be about who came before her. It'll be about what she's accomplished on her own terms.